Good evening. Good evening. Bonsoir à tous. Bonsoir à tous. Bonsoir à tous.
Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, good evening. I've always wanted to be an artist. So we are waiting for a few friends and partners who are going to sit down.
Few people to join us. So, well, so please take seats. Thank you. Very good. Well, so let me just start slowly with a few, I would say, housekeeping elements. So we are in the Musée Social. As you see, the room is really packed, and thank you so much. I mean, it's so heartening for us to see the room almost full and soon to be full. There are two safety exits in case there is an emergency. There's no fire drill that is planned for this evening. So if there is any event, it's because we need to go out. There is one exit that is there and another one just there. And if we need to meet, and the gathering point of the place is the number 9, basically just in front of here. So that's about the safety requirement for this evening. So thanks for being all with us. But before we start the event, we will spend the full evening together. At the very end of the session, and we have a very timed session, we will ask you to actually close your shares and put your shares on the left side so that we can enjoy basically a networking moment together and also a nice buffet and refreshment together. But I will come back to that later. But with no further ado, I would like to ask Livelihoods president and co-founder Bernard to join me on the scene to kick us start. Thank you very much.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see all those friendly faces around. It's a real pleasure. I will speak French, by the way. Je ne sais pas ce que je
I don't know what I'm going to tell you because the 18th of June, that was already an event 50 years ago, but someone more illustrious than I. So I'm going to try to be modestly to do my share. But it's a great joy to be with you this evening. Those who are in the room, but I think others are online following remotely, about 100 people everywhere around the world where we have projects and partners. So it's a great joy because we built this with many of you who are here tonight, and we have lived together shared successes and challenges in the last 15 years. So you have accompanied us in an adventure that was not an obvious one in the beginning. It was to connect rural communities at the other end of the world, all over the planet, to great international companies. And tonight, I would like to say that I have a special thought for those who enabled this adventure. And one man, Franck Ribou, who at the time was the CEO of Danone, and in 2008, when I came to see him to present this idea to say we should plant trees in Senegal, he looked at me with open, wide-eyed, and then we discussed why, because they could store carbon, and these were the mangroves that we decided to plant. He had this open-mindedness and courage to give us the means for the first projects. We had one first project in Senegal, then India, and in 2011, we created the first fund, Livelihoods. So I would also like to honor another person or acknowledge who was there from the beginning. And she, at the time, was a general director of the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, one of the greatest companies to defend the environment, Julia. And she is with us today. I'd like us to give her a big round of applause. But tonight, I'm also thinking of all our colleagues from the beginning, the companies who joined us, whereas we didn't have many results as proof to show them. I'm thinking of our friends from Voyageurs du Monde, obviously, with whom we shared the first project, but also Schneider Electric, Hermes, Michelin, Crédit Agricole, and a few others who were among the first to join the Livelihoods Carbon Fund when it was created in 2011, and who have faithfully supported us ever since they reinvested in the funds we created after the first one. These companies are deeply committed to reducing carbon emissions within their own value chains. This goes against this criticism we hear often saying, okay, they try to offset, but no, they are very committed in the net zero objective, reaching carbon neutrality by 2050, and they are investing in funds that are the livelihoods funds that are a complement to what they cannot reduce. They get carbon credits and they have an impact on the life of many people. They are taking the risk to invest. It's not a company that is buying carbon credit. They take the risk of investing capital in funds that will produce, if it works well, carbon credit for the long run. And I believe we can give them a big warm applause for that. I think that I'd like to thank them for the renewed trust they put in us and the fund that we are launching tonight, the NCF4. Not much imagination for our name, CF2, 3, 4. Maybe we could find something better, perhaps, but I'm also thinking very dearly to our partners with whom we have been working for on the ground, these NGOs, cooperatives, producers, local companies who every day in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Europe as well, with the regional Chambre d'Agriculture of Brittany. We have André, a representative here in the first row. And I believe that these partners play an essential part. It's their proximity to the ground, their knowledge of the local societies, and their tenacity. It's a 20-year project, and this means that we can succeed. But it is also thanks to the quality of the relationship we have with the partners. I'm trying to turn around because I had my back to you. So livelihoods is also a question of people and the links, the trust, the connection that we have plays a big part in all of this. I'd also like to pay a tribute to the livelihood venture team, in particular to my friend and co-founder Jean-Pierre Renaud, who is right there. And he was at the origins of the project with me, of Livelihood, but Guillaume Bocula, Eric Serna, who also played a crucial part in creating Livelihoods. Today, Livelihoods is a team of 60 people. It grew tremendously, right, Jean-Pierre? We started just the two of us. Now it's a little bigger. And 13 different nationalities, agronomists, foresters, carbon and rural development specialists, some financiers as well, and lawyers. Everything we need to achieve what we are doing. It's a greatly motivated team and brilliantly led now by someone who took the lead, Eric, 2 years ago. And I'd like to thank him for having taken the relay, but with great efficiency and great conviction, unwavering conviction, because that's what you need in such an activity. There would be no impact of livelihood projects without the meticulous and highly professional work of this team. So I'd like us to thank them today. In 15 years together, we have contributed to improving the living conditions of more than 3 million people, restoring 100,000 hectares of land, planting 150 million trees, livelihood funds have already delivered 5 million carbon credits, with 40 million expected in the coming years. It's at the same time a lot, but we're proud of this altogether. But it is very little if we look at the challenges facing our planet. In 15 years, we have learned quite a few things that will be useful for the future, the new LCF4 fund. First, we cannot separate the fight against climate change from the living conditions of the men and women who live in a given territory. Livelihood projects are carried out with and by people, humans, and local populations with the farmers. A small farming couple doesn't plant trees for carbon sequestration, but for fruit, wood, shade for their cocoa trees, or coffee plants, and to improve their income and their family's livelihood. It's thanks to carbon financing that we can provide them with hundreds of trees they need and offer the necessary training and technical support that is useful to them. But without their commitment, there would be no carbon credits. Carbon is a link between two inseparable necessities. On the one hand, the need to massively reduce our emissions, and on the other, the need for social progress, finding the technical, economic, and social models that can satisfy these two requirements is not a choice. It's simply a necessity to succeed. It's not so easy, but and I can say so myself, it's incredibly exciting. And that is why we call ourselves livelihoods. Livelihood. A second lesson, which may seem obvious, is that you have to do things seriously by mobilizing all the necessary knowledge and skills to find solutions that work. By the way, it's not necessarily easy in the different geographies, by carefully choosing the right partners and by trying to anticipate problems. And that's difficult, anticipating. From industry, we learned how to do one thing: simplify structure and streamline processes to scale up. But our work remains largely that of a craftsman capable of understanding and adapting to often complex local situations while respecting human groups with their history and culture. Like from craftsmanship, we have a concern for the tangible, for detail, for the quality of execution. The work of livelihoods is not about bombastic communication or posturing, as we see all too often. Finally, if we succeed, it will be together, faced with the complexity of the challenges no single actor, whether private or public, NGO or company, holds the solution. The strength of the livelihoods model lies in working together by combining everyone's strength, by successfully bringing together organizations that don't speak the same language and don't necessarily share the same initial objectives. I believe that our ability to build and sustain these operational coalitions over time is a significant asset for the future. We particularly need this in a world where anxieties lead to every man for himself, to a retreat into immediate interests, a world that is increasingly fragmented despite interdependencies, currently dominated by power struggles and violence. In this context, livelihoods might seem like a naive utopian dream, yet the problems remain. Some may try to make us believe that climate change doesn't exist. Today it's quite difficult, but we may try to ignore the collapse of biodiversity or the populations most directly affected by these upheavals. But reality will come back to haunt us sooner or later, and very painfully so. Continuing on our chosen path is a matter of realism. I commend the vision of our partners who have not been discouraged by the headwinds and who are investing in this new LCF4 fund. Quite simply, in the heart of rural France, we believe that in our own way, we are carrying a message of hope and working towards progress and perhaps peace. Thank you all for being here and sharing your experience this evening.
listening to you, I was really reflecting on my own journey as a livelihooder, because I think my own journey probably started in 2012 with my first conversation with Bernard, and very soon after with Jean-Pierre. And I remember our first conversation, Bernard. I was just arriving in India for Danone. I was in the middle of a field with milk farmer, and I was discussing with you that I couldn't find good quality milk in Haryana for our first factory there. And that was our first conversation. And I think what united us at the very beginning, and after I've grown a few more gray hairs, is really the fact that we've always been convinced that there is no meaningful change that don't start with people. And I think that's really what unites livelihood and probably many of us today in this room. And of course, we need to unite people, especially right now. Changes don't start with finance. They don't start with PowerPoints. They don't start with carbon, as you said. They start with and for people. For the farmers that decide to plant a tree because they consider that timber will be a revenue for the future and for their families. For the fishing communities in the mangrove areas that consider that restoring coastal areas is actually going to deliver more revenues for their families. But with our partners as well, that are fundamentally engraved in the roots of their communities and want to impact them positively. And this is the simple idea that unites us. Carbon, as you said, Bernard, is not a mean. It's not an end for. It's not a mean for us. It's not an end for us. It's a mean. It's a bridge between environmental impact and social impact. That's how we've utilized that tool to actually create livelihoods. And LCF4 is going to build on the learning that you highlighted. It's going to build on that and also at the same time explore new territories, we hope. Because the world is not lack of problems. There are so many problems, but also opportunities. We can look at, for instance, how sustainable grazing can actually be a way for us to structure more programs. And it's very true in Latin America or in Mongolia, for instance. We can discuss how blue carbon, for instance, seaweed, we were discussing that with Jean-Pierre no later that today, can be maybe a source of new programs that is very meaningful also for the planet. We could also try to combine approaches, how agriculture and landscape restoration can resonate together. So our ambition is very clear. LCF4 is going to try to impact 500,000 people, to try to sequester or avoid between 7 to 10 million tons of carbon, and at the center, to have an impact on the communities. But we will also, and I think that's probably one of the things we want to dial up in livelihoods, we're going to try to deepen our understanding of impact. And that's very important because we are in 2026, and in 2026, we have the chance to have technologies that help us to do much beyond and to go much beyond than what we were expecting a few years ago. If you take tools like eDNA, for people who know that, LiDAR, but also artificial intelligence, they can help us to know better. But one thing that is clear for me is that we should do it the livelihood way. And the livelihood way means with very strong and deep-rooted pragmatism. Technology should serve people. People should not serve technology. That means that fundamentally, the technology should help farmers to take better decisions, should help us to have better traceability on our impact so that basically we can also remunerate better the impact that we are generating. So this pragmatism will be key for us in LCF4, and we will continue basically developing this journey. Because impact is not basically coming from PowerPoints, it's not coming from algorithms, it's coming from people. So we'll try to continue testing a few things, and the test for us will be relatively simple. We will ask ourselves, does it help people? Does it strengthen ecosystems? Does it create value for the people who need it the most? If the answer is yes, we will embrace it. And I have a very particular president that is always looking at that. The answer must be yes on that. But if the answer is no, we need to dare to move on and look at for other opportunities. So helping people and nature together, this is what LCF4 is going to continue doing. And it's my turn also to thank our partners for their vote of trust, confidence. I think especially in 2026, renewing your commitment in this adventure has never been as meaningful as it is today. So big thank you to you. And this is basically making us waking up every day. Thank you very much. We have a full agenda, and the mistress of ceremony now is Christine Porta, our very only CFO. So, Christine. Thank you.
Does it work? Yes. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Christine, and I'm Livelihoods CFO. I've been working with the company for 10 years now. Enjoyed every bit of it, and with all the teams that were there and all our partners. I have the pleasure to host the first sequence, which is aiming at showing you how our projects deliver impact, and more especially, what are the real benefits, not only for climate, but only for communities to get those environmental and social benefits on the ground. For this, we will have precious testimonies from a range of partners, not only from our NGO partners, but also from our corporate investors, which will try to show you how, what they understand of the impact of livelihood and how it translates on the ground. We have the pleasure to start in Guatemala, where Livelihoods has been running a project since 2013, east of Guatemala, at the foot of the Cerro San Gil Mountain, restoration and agroforestry project to restore plots, to get agroforestry system, to produce products such as cardamom. And we have the pleasure for that to welcome Karen Aguilar from our Guatemalan partner, Fundaeco, and also Angelica, who is our Livelihoods Project Senior Manager supervising the project. Hello, Karen, Angelica, how are you doing? Do you hear me?
Well, we are great. We are very happy to be here with you. Hello, Bernard, Jean-Pierre, and everybody over there.
Where are you located exactly? In which part are you in Guatemala right now?
We are located at Puerto Barrios in the Cerro San Gil Reserve. We are located at a rubber plantation right behind us.
Okay. So, Angelica, I will start with you. Can you just share a brief overview on the project and tell us what has been done on the ground with the project with regards to impact?
Yes, thank you, Christine. So in this territory, Livelihoods and Fundaeco have been working together since 2013 to implement 1,600 hectares on rubber plantation and agroforestry systems with cardamom, rambutan, and timber. And the idea is for these areas to provide alternative income to the families and local communities that live inside the reserve. And this has a very important impact on the reserve because it reduces the pressure on the natural forest, pristine forest that we have here, the biodiversity and the water reserves.
Thank you, Angelica. And how was it possible to do this on the ground?
Well, we have a local team, local leaders that have been working on the area since many years ago. So they are very well informed on the local dynamics, on the needs of the local communities. And this was, I think, a key point because as you were explaining at the beginning of this session, it is hard to explain to people that this commitment is a long-term commitment. So having the trust of the people to start a project like this with new plantations that were not known in the area, it's a thing of trust and of course, of having a whole team and a whole mechanism that supports the producers in their different needs and the different stages.
Thank you very much. And now that this has been done for now a little less than 15 years. How do you see those changes, and how are you saying people daily lives changing by those impacts, and the ecosystem also? How do you see the impact changes on that?
Well, yeah, as Angelica was saying, the project is located in Cerro San Gil Protected Area, which is a key biodiversity area. It's an important part of the migratory bird corridor, and it's also a main watershed for local communities and a main port town that it's called Puerto Barrios. So it's a landscape important for biodiversity and for thousands of people. So the project is helping to maintain ecosystem services while generating incomes for the local communities. So far, we know that at least 60% of the project participants have seen their incomes increase as a result of the project. Beyond these numbers, we have also some personal great stories, inspiring stories. For example, a woman that has a rubber plantation, and that with the incomes that she received from the plantation was able to buy another plot of land and expand her plantation. So we can see that the project impacts can go beyond the time and can be multiplied and replicated across the region. So I think it's great to have this project. Of course, we need to talk about challenges. And as Bernard was saying, climate change is one of the main challenges. We live that, we experienced that from the very beginning of the project with a long drought that forced us to try solutions such as hydrogel to guarantee seedling survival.
Yes.
And then 2 years ago, another long drought that threatened with forest fires. Luckily, we didn't have any fires in the plantations, but that forced us also to create early warning systems and coordination systems with the communities and with the institutions to prevent this to happen and to prevent this threat in the future.
Thank you very much. So quite a few impacts, not only on the ecosystem, but also on people's lives, income, and of course, well-being. Thank you very much to both of you for this testimony, and enjoy the rubber trees in Guatemala and also the nice weather.
Thank you.
And we will now reach Kevin Rabinovich, who is Mars Global Vice President in charge of sustainability. Mars has been a long-standing investor and partner in the Livelihoods project. Kevin, are you with us?
Hello, Christine.
Hello. We don't see you right now, but we hear you. Where are you?
I sound better than I look, so that's fine.
Nice view. You're near the beach. You're in Virginia?
I am, yes.
Right. Kevin, you have been a long-standing partner, as I said, of Livelihoods projects. You have been visiting also recently quite a few projects, not only in Rwanda, in Indonesia, in other countries. What, in your point of view, what kind of impacts have you observed, beyond, of course, carbon metrics? And why does it matter to Mars?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, maybe thanks for the invitation to be part of this. This is LCF4 will be the third fund where Mars has been involved, and I think Eric probably talked to Bernard before we did, but we weren't too far behind him. So I think the conversations go back to probably 2013 now, and so it's been a real pleasure working with Livelihoods and becoming part of the Livelihoods family. In terms of the projects themselves, I think the thing for us as an investor that we find most compelling on the carbon side, and obviously, well, maybe not obviously, Mars is also involved in some of the value chain funds that Livelihood does, but on the carbon side in particular, the thesis behind Livelihoods of really doing things that on the ground look to the farmers like something that's improving their livelihoods, but to us as investors look like things that are sequestering carbon, and finding that clever overlap between what looks like a livelihoods project on the ground to the farmer and what looks like to a investor on another continent, a carbon sequestration or removal activity, is a really successful and really compelling model. And I think when we go to the ground, we see that. We see examples of farmers who are excited about or enthusiastic or engaged in whatever the activity behind the project is, and in some cases maybe don't really understand the carbon math,
Probably.
which is fine because that's not their life. That's not what they're living. That's not ultimately why they're doing the project, which in a way is the strength, because they're doing it for reasons that make sense to them, and we're doing it for reasons that make sense for us. And I think what Livelihoods does is find that overlap where the one activity looks like something different to two different parties, and that's really where the synergy comes in. The other thing I'll maybe say that I think is interesting, having had a chance to visit a number of livelihoods projects over the years, some quite young early on in their life cycle and some much more mature, is I think there's a real commitment to the evolution and the development and the increasing sophistication of projects over time. As has famously been said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. So, you always have an idea of how the project is going to go, and then you start doing it, and the real world turns out differently despite your best efforts. And I think Livelihoods does a tremendous job of pivoting and adjusting and planning and evolving, which is part of what gives the projects longevity and lets them keep going. And so, sometimes in the early days of seeing a project on the ground, it can look a little rough. But when you see some of the projects 5 years, 10 years down the line, you really see how some of those improvements and evolutions over time have institutionalized it.
Thank you very much, Kevin, indeed, for this very thorough overview of the project, their complexity, and all the kinds of impact that can be seen, not only for the communities, but also for the investors. Thank you very much. Et maintenant, j'ai le plaisir d'accueillir.
And now I am happy to welcome André Sergent. Hello, André. André is not only a great partner of our project in Brittany since 2021 for regenerating soils over 11,000 hectares with about 100 farmers. He also led the Chamber of Agriculture of Brittany. He's a farmer leading other farmers. So he's both a political and operational leader. My question for you, André, is given your experience as a project leader and farmer, what has changed since the beginning of this project? Yes, good evening to everyone. I'm still a farmer at the end of his career, and I'm lucky enough to have youngsters, my son, my daughter-in-law, who are already taking over my farm, where we breed, we produce milk. We have a robotic system. We also produce pork. And we also work on methane, which enables us to produce energy and natural fertilizers for the farm. When my son arrived, it was about 200 hectares. Now it's more like 400. And my son was more aware of soil regeneration because he had studied agronomy more than breeding. And so he raised my awareness to those topics because for my generation, it was a bit complicated to change everything. My technique was simple. It was plowing. And my son said, we need to stop all of this. We need to regenerate soils and permanently cover the soil. So I had all sorts of contacts. As the chairman of the Chamber of Agriculture, I had also committed the region, Brittany, to engage in this. So what has changed from the um, pest products, the pesticides, has reduced. The working time has reduced massively as well, because we want to keep a productive agriculture, and that's my philosophy. And we want to talk about equipment as well, which is very costly. We don't always have it. That's the only challenge. Otherwise, it's very positive.
Important avec un.
It's important to talk to someone who's close to us and has a very global vision of things.
Last testimony will come from a long-standing partner of Livelihoods, who is the Nandi Foundation. Nandi Foundation in India is a long-standing partner with which we have developed a large-scale coffee and agroforestry project in India. And we will have the testimony of Manoj Kumar, which is the CEO of Nandi Foundation, which has recorded his testimony because with the time lag in India, it was not possible for him to be a live session. And he will take time to explain to us what has happened on this 15-year journey, because we started the projects with the Nandi Foundation in 2011. So it's a long-standing partner with which we have done a lot of things. And to tell you how now they have achieved a lot of things, the Araku coffee brand, which was developed throughout these projects, is now known in Europe over the US, and they even have started to open their fourth shop in Paris, which you can go to test the Araku coffee. So maybe we can launch the testimony of Manoj so that you can hear it and have his view on the impacts of the projects. There is some problem.
For the last 25 years for the Nandi Foundation. We were probably the first partner, if not the first one, at least definitely one of the earliest partners for the Livelihoods Fund. And I remember that we were involved in discussions with Bernard and Jean-Pierre, JP and Bernard, even before the fund was created. You know, we used to be discussing how will it help small farmers? Can it be of use to Nandi's agriculture portfolio? So we feel very proud that we were even involved in creating the fund's architecture itself. The second part that I want to highlight is the journey itself. If you see, by now we have 5.5 million trees planted. Mind you, when I say 5.5 million trees, unlike classic imagination, they are not one or two varieties. We have 18 varieties of trees. And in fact, 10 years before the fund came, when Nandi started work, even before, we were told that the region was called semi-wasteland. A semi-wasteland got converted with the help of this partnership to become one of the best biological diverse reserve. It became a carbon sink. This is spread across over 700 villages, and we have almost 85% to 90% participation of households in each village. So it's almost everybody is part of it. Truly, the real impact is not just these numbers. The real impact is that it changed the destiny of the people there. These people became not just forest dwellers, not just people dependent on non-timber forest produce, but they became orchard owners and coffee estate owners. So you should understand how dramatic is the transformation in terms of status, in terms of economic changes, in terms of hope, and in terms of repositioning the people of that region from indigenous tribes, just forest dwellers, they became horticulturists. But at a very personal level, for me, I think this partnership has given me a very deep and close friendship with Bernard. Bernard in particular and Bernard with JP became family to me. And that's probably my greatest personal gain.
A big gain indeed. So this now closes the first sequence. I hope this has given you an array of the kind of impact we research on the Livelihoods project, how we want to develop them. And we, of course, we want to go further with our next funds and also, of course, with our partners, without which nothing could be done. I hand it over now to Meg. From Livelihoods also, we will see how collaboration works in the field. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meg Phillips, and I work for Livelihoods as a senior advisor for sustainable sourcing. So everyone in the room today is very familiar with the Livelihoods Carbon Funds, but we also apply the same livelihood ways, our ethos and impact within value chains as well. So that's a bit of the context about what I do at Livelihoods, and I'm going to invite our panelists up all together directly here, and while I explain a little bit about what the purpose of this panel is. So it's a... So it's a pleasure to host this panel today with you all here. And as Christine already introduced, today is about how we really collaborate together to realize that impact in the field from NGOs, livelihoods ourselves, and the businesses and our investors. So we understand that no single actor can really solve the climate and social challenges alone. So that really is paramount for why we need to work together. And we want to ask ourselves the question, what's really needed and what works? So to start us off, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I am going to start with Sam Kanyamibwa. He is the founder and CEO of Arcos Network, which, if you're not familiar with Arcos Network, it is a conservation organization working across Rwanda. He's well known within Livelihoods and within many other projects, and he sees our projects firsthand in the field. He delivers our projects in the field, and you're kind of the voice from the field on the panel today. No pressure, Sam. Next, we have Delphine de Kista, my fellow livelihooder. So Delphine is a project manager working on our East Africa projects. So you've been with Livelihoods a few years, and you also work with Sam on the Rwanda project. And next up, we have Pierre Alexander Babst, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Hermes. So you, of course, lead the sustainability strategy of Hermes, but for Livelihoods, you've also been one of our most faithful partners because you've joined us through LCF1, LCF2, LCF3. I'm sure you'll be there for LCF100 in the end. And you've also seen our projects firsthand, which I find quite remarkable as well. last but not least, we have Antoine Clement. So you lead the environmental management and corporate sustainability at SAP. Now, SAP has been our partner since 2011, but Antoine, you yourself, you're quite new to representing SAP at Livelihoods, at the Livelihoods Carbon Fund. So you will bring a fresher set of eyes, which is always needed in the end. But what you maybe picked up from our panelists is that there is a common thread running through all of them, and that is the interest in the project in Rwanda as well. We have Delphine that works on it, you implementing it, and our businesses and investors that go visit the field and champion its mission. So if you're not familiar with our ARCOS project, it is a large-scale agroforestry project in Rwanda, targeting, was it over 100,000 community members? Was it quite a bit, I imagine? And 24,000. 24,000. Oh, I mean, families, family members. Oh, good, good. And so I'm going to return to you, Sam, for the very first question. So ARCOS, we started this collaboration together in 2020, so we've been working together for the last 6 years. But the ARCOS network has recently celebrated its 30th anniversary, so congratulations for that. That's fantastic too. And my question to you is, you've been working alongside a lot of communities, private sector partners and other institutions. How did you actually come into contact with Livelihoods, and how has our relationship developed over time?
Thank you so much, Meg, and good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, the relationship with Livelihoods is already a mature, long story, because it is now almost 8 years that we started in 2018 talking, and this took almost 2 years to start a project in 2020. How did it start? As Bernard said, all is about identifying the right partner. So that was already a process. And we were informed through the Ministry of Environment that a company is looking for a partner in Rwanda. And we were among the 4 organizations. So we went through a selection, and we were selected. So that was the first celebration. Then we went through a phase that I can say a beginning phase, a development phase, which was really to know each other, to design the project, and we started the project. And this has been really already, you could see how Livelihoods is a partner you can trust, because what we were discussing was not about judging. It was looking at what can work for us. And we put together a very good project, which was really based on the context of the country. Rwanda is a country of 1,000 hills. It's mountainous. It's not hot like here. Here it is burning, today. But it is also very submitted to erosion, a lot of erosion. So we put together a good project, 15,000 hectares in agroforest system. And that implementation phase was marked really by good partnership, communication, and looking at how best we can have the results. And the last phase, I would say, which is now we are looking at where we are. We are looking at how we can innovate, how we can really transform the system we have started. And all of this journey is marked by the expertise that we started from the beginning by Livelihoods, which had then worked in this carbon project from the beginning. And as a conservation and development organization, looking at how conservation people, communities can really benefit from the project. And this has been a good journey. And today we are even looking at how we can develop another project. So that kind of really transformation, evolution is fascinating. And I thank Bernard, the team, for this trust.
Thank you so much, Sam. So it also touches on what Kevin from Mars said earlier about the being able to adapt along the way as well. My next question goes to Pierre-Alexandre. So you yourself, you've visited Rwanda last year and more recently visited Indonesia, and you've been our partner since day one. So my question to you, Pierre-Alexandre, is what is it that has made Hermes want to stay so involved in these projects, literally from the boardroom to the field?
Well, I think all the positive aspects of the project and on the program have been already mentioned. And maybe what we found interesting was the capacity to contribute in excess of just giving money. And we've been, as you mentioned, an active partner since 2012, I guess, which means with Eric and another more than 100 board or internal investment committee meetings, 20 visits of the sites locally to go there and discuss with people like Sam and make wonderful encounters. Contribution to livelihood camps, meeting with everyone, making sure we can understand what's happening and bring our little share of voice or ideas on that. And also our capacity to bring our employees on board, and we organize around 10 trips for our own people to go and see what it means, even in Brittany, where we had some people from Korea or Japan coming in Brittany under the sun. Thank you, Bernard, for that. And Jean-Pierre, no rain, to discover the regenerative agriculture, the French way. So this made the relationship quite unique. Because, as you mentioned, it's quite strange to engage for 25 years. I mean, I was yesterday in a budget meeting, and I think we were struggling to figure out what was going to happen in the next 18 months. And if you have clues from me, thank you, we'll be there after the presentation. But in 25 years, and when this morning we also had a discussion on livelihood, and I was asked, so what's your feedback after 15 years of livelihood projects, and what are the numbers and what are the pros and cons and so forth? It was quite difficult because at the beginning, really, it was a bet, and I think a very valuable bet. And to go to your question, what makes this relationship very unique? And I would like maybe to highlight it around 8 elements. 8 is the magic number in Asia world. I would say honesty and modesty, and I think Sam will agree on every word I will say, and we did not repeat together. Trust and respect, both ways. I think that's key in what's happening. There is a problem. We trust that you have tried to do the best, and we will respect what you have chosen as a solution. We'll try to improve things. Of course, the quality. And for a company like Hermes, quality is something that is talking to us, and even in the details. And when we speak about these big numbers, we speak about thousands of hectares, but we have to think that they are splitted in half an hectare or 1 hectare plot. And we have to be in a quality on 1 hectare plot. That's something very different. Of course, people in the heart of what we do, and I think Bernard highlighted that's a very important matter. With my 6-point, which is craftsmanship, and every project is handmade, and I would say even for a company like us, it's something interesting. And maybe the last 2 things is that Livelihood always have a pragmatic and efficient approach, and really we are on the ground, and as Bernard told us, we come from the industrial world, but we can apply things that are really working with efficiency, but with a real sense of what is necessary or not. And maybe the last thing, which I would like to highlight in these days, where not only the weather, but also the general ambience may be a little gloomy, an always positive approach. When you go in a board or visit a field, you come back with, I would say, excuse my French, with a banana. I mean, you really have a strength, and you really have the power coming from what you've done, and this giving us the hope that we're gonna make it, we're gonna succeed, we're gonna transform the soils, we're gonna help the population to evolve, we're gonna contribute to resolve the carbon issues. And I think this positive mindset is in the heart of all the project, is in the heart of everything, and that makes also Livelihood very unique.
Thank you so much for that, Pierre. I'm going to now pass to my colleague, Delphine. So you're the one that works with the project, bridging it from day to day. Merci, Antoine. So I'll put it back to you in your role as a project manager at Livelihoods, sitting between all these various partners here. What do you think is key to actually making the collaborations work?
Okay, thank you, Meg. First, good evening, and I'm very honored and impressed to be here with you, so thank you. I will focus on Rwanda. This country has always captivated me. Volcanoes, southern hills, forests, nature conservation. And the first person I met in Rwanda was Sam, like 5 years ago, I think, many years ago. And so I met someone passionate. You dedicate your life to restoring ecosystems with and for the communities. And so we started to have long discussion exchanges, and you spoke about Diane Fossé, your work, everything. And so we finally found a strong connection, and this is what I call a bridge. So really a bridge to partner with organizations we work with. And I think this is key to then to manage project and to develop, to build the project. I really believe that the foundation of a successful long-term, very long-term partnership is a continuous engagement, honesty and trust, as you said, and this is key. This is key for a strong collaboration, to build it and to keep it alive also. It will last for long. When I say continuous engagement, is a lot of work for everybody. On my side, I go to Rwanda every 2 months, 2 weeks, something like that. We have weekly exchanges, weekly meetings. We spoke a lot, informal communication channel. So I am a mom of 4 boys. I come from Brittany also. So it's also a lot of logistic and a real engagement. Then, yeah, honesty and trust. I think this is key. It's not always like a rainbow. We have some strong discussions, and you need to have this foundation of trust to be able to move forward and to have like key topics, strategic topics. And we have already had a lot. I remember a field mission and we spoke about the future, how we could do more and how we will do more. So yeah, continuous engagement, honesty, trust, for me, this is key. And it's not only about restoring ecosystems. It's also how you strengthen organizations. All the organizations we're working with. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Delphine. And now to you, Antoine. So SAP has renewed its partnership with Livelihoods year after year after year, and as part of your push to net zero in 2030 as well. So what's the value for you in joining a platform with partners from such different sectors, SAP, Hermes? You can see quite a vast difference there. Do you?
That's true. It's always hard to speak the last because I have the impression that everything has been said already, but I try. So SAP aims to be net zero by 2030, which is a big challenge. But what I like with net zero, we have to talk to our customers. We have to talk to our suppliers. It's really a collective objective. And it reminds me that fighting climate change needs to be done all together. That's why when we joined Livelihood, it felt naturally to us. And what I like working with experts from other sustainability companies. So when we make a decision, when we are in expert meetings, it's discussed, it's overlooked by us, of course, but also many, many other people from many, many other experiences. And it gives me trust that when we take a decision in the board meetings, it's the right decision because it has been overlooked by many, many people with many, many experiences. So it's giving me trust and a good learning opportunities. And many times from you, I like your questions and thinking about the resolutions. So we are also learning all together on how to do things, and I really appreciate this. Thank you. And last, I think it's important to say that we are sharing the financial risks. Without livelihood, we would be buying on the spot markets, but investing long term is what is creating the real impact for the people and the planet. And I think it really matters to have those long-term investments. So thank you, Livelihood.
Thank you so much, Hans. So just to recap this first round of questions, so four very different people sitting in each of these seats, but there was a recurring theme: trust, trust. I'm saying trust now, trust and trust. So that's really, I think, captures the spirit of a reason for our partners to all come together. We discuss a bit about people's motivations as well to come together in a coalition with the Livelihoods funds. But now I want to pivot to, okay, we've brought people together. Now, how do we stay together over the long term? So I'm going to return to you, Pierre-Alexandre. So I have reiterated multiple times that you've been with us from the very beginning. So a lot of pressure on you to give that long-term perspective from the panel here. And I wanted to ask you, after these 15 years, what's the personal lessons that you take away from your engagement with LCF?
The personal lesson, when there is a problem, there is a solution, I guess. And at the beginning, the problem was about water in the Casamance region and how we can manage that. And then it was a carbon, but carbon was maybe the alibi at the beginning. And then was the question of scaling up, and so that this poor company like Danone wanted to have other people to pay for it. So we came on board. And we choose to join efforts on that, and that was good. And so the lesson is that we can do a lot when we work together. And we talk about coalition, partnership, blah, blah. That's big words. That's just working together. And I think that's a good lesson because, as you mentioned, we managed to work together. I mean, it's difficult, and I don't have that many examples of coalition with more 20 so different companies sitting together at a table and being in agreement for everything, almost every decision, agreeing to disagreeing, but then convincing the other one and so forth. And same with the NGOs, where, of course, as you mentioned, Delphine, we don't agree, or you don't agree completely with everything that Sam is doing, and that's you paid for that to control a little bit. But in the end, you find a way to make it go together. So this is a long-term adventure with a kind of global approach, very well organized thanks to Livelihoods team, but not that much that gives the flexibility. And we are not scared that it's not that much because we know that we can count on people that will make it a success. And I remember when we had this camp in Burkina Faso, and Bernard came with me and said, I'm a little straightforward guy. Sometimes I come from the audit, I'm sorry. So sometimes I like to have things very neatly organized. And it will be, Pierre Alex, here, forget about that. It's going to be messy and with a twist that you will never know what will happen in the next 15 minutes, but just relax and it will be a success. And I think I always listen to Bernard and I say, okay, this is going to happen like that. And I think in many of our projects, it's happening like that. Of course, they are very well organized and so forth, but there are always things going back and forth. And I think it's a good thing. And maybe if I can add another point, is it works because everybody has a sense of purpose in what we are doing. So for the company, it can be more or less the question of carbon or contribution to create a better world. For the farmers, it's less carbon, more than just giving the livelihoods or being a part of something which is bigger, which can give also a sense of pride to a community. I'm thinking of the people in Araku, where these Adivasi tribes, really, they have created something great. I think they are very proud of what they are doing. And I think this alignment of sense of purposes creates the reason for success on what we've done so far.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Alexandre. I just wanted to comment that I think it's so true what you've been saying on this panel about visiting the field. One thing to get that perspective and be understanding the realities. but also that also helps drive the passion to be able to see the actual impact in the field when you do go there.
It's true that when, I mean, it's always the case. You look at reports, well-printed report on white paper, it's nice, you have numbers, etc. But when you go and discuss on the field, you see the people and you have this feeling that you are contributing to a little something. I remember with Jean-Pierre, where we were in Araku the first times, and we met with this little farmer in the middle of nowhere. I think he had 15, 20 trees, not more. And we were asking, but you have left the village and you come here? And he said, yes, I built a small home here. And the home is a big word for a shelter. And he said, I'm going to stay and live now in my field because this is my bank account. This is what I will give to my children. And I want to make sure that grazing will not compromise what I've done and that my field will become a forest as I expect. And when you have this kind of testimony, I mean, you don't come back and change. And we have many examples like that. And I think this connection with the reality is through what's a tremendous work done by the NGOs and the tremendous work by the livelihood people which are transmitting all of that to us makes it even a greater project for the investors.
Thank you so much. And since you just gestured to Delphine, you get the next question. So we all know here that our carbon projects, they work on a horizon of 20 plus years. And at that point, it's not just a project, it's like a full-on marriage at this point. So my question to you is, after so long, how do you keep the spark alive in that? How do you keep all the partners collaborating together, being resilient along the way? Over to you.
Thank you, Meg. Yes, it's like a wedding, basically. And you're not allowed to divorce. So 3 words come to mind. It's joy, energy, and creativity. And joy, a lot of joy is needed to feed the energy of the project. And this is really important to take care of joy. And I think this is something you do a lot at Arcos. And so we have a lot of joy when we go and you experience it when you are in the field. For sure, resilience is fundamentally about embracing the change, because there will be a lot of change during these 20, 25, 30 years. Change of methodology, climate change, a lot of change can happen. So we need to be resilient, which is part also of a wedding, I guess, as a joy. And creativity, this is really an important word, especially now. I mean, in the time of monitoring for the project, we need to be very creative. And there is a quote by Einstein I love, is creativity is intelligence having fun. So let's be intelligent collectively in our project and pragmatic. I think this is important. So yeah, today we need to be creative. We need to think about the value chain, how to improve this topic in the project. So we are working on timber. We work with the nurseries, also community nurseries, to support their autonomy on a long term, to continue to plant and to bring more trees to the farmers. So yes, creativity is a key word also. We need to anticipate also. This is what you do a lot, anticipate risk, but we cannot anticipate everything. Today in Rwanda, the climate change is quite heavy also. Drought, it's more intense. It's going to be longer. A lot of landslides, people dying with the landslides. So we need to be able to embrace the change and to give some good answers. Yes, so ultimately, trust for me remains the cornerstone of resilience. This is what, will enable difficult conversation and supports. So over time, organization grows and we go together. And so as a wedding, we change, we grow. And we have beautiful children. So
that's perfect. And now let me go to one of the partners in this marriage. So Sam, I wanted to ask you, and also from the perspective of the people that these projects are really for everything you've seen over the 30 years with our course network, how did projects like these truly reach a community and change something for them?
Yeah, very important point, because at the end of the day, what we do is for people. And to put in a perspective, what we are talking here, most of the projects that Livelihoods is supporting are large, big projects. In Rwanda particularly, we have very high density of population. So we are dealing with many people. So the first thing to think about is how, whatever you do, all these people are going to be committed and to maintain the interest in the project. So that is why the project has to adopt a model of bottom-up to make sure that we listen. We listen, we don't dictate. Actually, we are partners with these communities. We talk to them, we provide the training, but also they have the knowledge that we need to understand. They have some suggestions how things can work. So this connection really between technicians and the communities themselves is a good marriage, which is very, very important to build on. Then, in order to make sure that this interest keeps on, we are talking about long-term marriage. It's not like today where you have, marriage ceremonies, then you hear the bad stories after a very short time. You have to keep in mind, how can we keep this for a long time? So one of the approaches that we have, and this is really good also for Livelihoods project, to make sure that the budgeting is not looking at the initial phase of tree planting, because the project is not, as Brenda said, it's not about carbon, it's about long term, it's about communities. It's how can we transform the lives of people along a period of time? How can we build values for these people? That's where we think about value chains, for example. So we are planting trees today, but these trees, we are going to provide the benefits to people. How do we make sure that we start looking at the market for these people? How do we look at the value chains which are going to sustain over a long period of time? Then another aspect which is really important is to have a good structure of staffing. I mean, our course started with about less than 100 people. Now we have 245 staff. And this is because the Livelihoods understand you needed to invest in resources in order to engage, to work with these people. So we have a staff who are in the field. Majority of our staff, over 80%, are in the field because we have to work with these communities. Then access to finance. Communities, you can talk. You can, say you are friends, you are talking very well. But one aspect which is really important is to have a starting investment so that they can do micro projects. They can meet the needs they want financially, but making sure that this is also benefiting the objectives of the project. So that combination, you are looking at really what, as the project you have put on the paper, you want to achieve, but it has to be translated on the needs and the values of people.
Thank you so much for that, Sam. I'm going to turn to Antoine and give you the last say on the panel today. So just to close us out on that is, so when it comes to SAP, why do you choose to invest in nature-based solutions, and particularly those with a really strong social components as part of the coalition like this?
Thank you. So SAP's purpose is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. So thank you for helping us to contribute to our purpose. And nature-based because we think that reforestation, planting trees is a very effective way to mitigate climate change. And this is what we are all aiming for here. But planting a tree is quite simple, but keeping it alive or replanting for many, many years is hard. And we know we need the people in the fields to take care of the trees. So projects with strong co-benefits, they are not an option for us. They are mandatory to make it a success. And I would say that I will echo you. We don't do it for the carbon. The carbon is just a very good way to convince CEOs. We do it for the people. So thank you.
So I think my takeaway from this panel is that no matter how different everyone is in their background and their positions, we kind of all very much align on the core principles, which is establishing the trust, being very pragmatic. I like the term you used, Sam, being bottom up. And I'm sure we're going to carry through all these learnings into LCF4 as well. And we look forward to we look forward to developing this further with you all. And with that, that's the close of our panel. So one last final applause for our panelists. And now I will actually pass to Manuela for a fireside chat. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Bonjour à tous.
Hello to everyone. When I say hello to everyone, I mean you sitting here in front of me. Very important, all of you, even though I'm going to be turning my back to you, but you're still here in my heart, but also the people who are connected with us today. For this session, for a brief presentation, right now I'm your host. In everyday life, I work at the global level, and I am also part of the board of Livelihoods. And I'm going to tell you about my superpower now, which is to find solutions and manage the unexpected, because I've been working in logistics for a long time, and no matter what, things must continue running. So the objective of this session is to explore together why some companies decide to go beyond regulations and invest beyond their value chain. So in order to answer this question, I'm lucky enough to have several people. Gilles Vermaux-Desroches from Schneider, who's the Chief Corporate Citizenship Officer, Lionel Abasque as well, who's the Director General for Voyageurs du Monde. Later on, Antoine from Danone will join us. You can sit wherever you feel comfortable. Gilles, I'm going to start with you. I know that you're amongst the very first investors with Schneider, and I think the first one. You're very committed, and I'd like you to share with us why you joined this adventure, knowing that there are thousands of opportunities in life. Why did you choose this one? And why, after 15 years, you're still sticking to it? Okay, thank you very much for this question and for the energy here regarding the future. I would like to say 3 words. First of all, 15 years ago, a Monday morning, 8:30, I think the coffee was called the Osman Corner, and we had a cup of coffee. I was with Bernard, and he presented this project he wanted to set up, and we had to find a co-investor for Danone. And by the end of the week, I think we managed to have a meeting between Ribou and Tricoire. And so we decided to embark on this adventure together. But the first word is trust. If we're here, it's because we've done a number of things with Danone. And our CEO at the time always started a meeting with my business as people, and if you disagree, walk out of the room. So trust came from the year 2000, where Danone and my company had embarked on a joint venture. So trust is very important because from all of the initial investors, many are still here today. And the collective we managed to create is the reason for which we're still here, because we've taken trust forward. If there hadn't been any trust, if it had only been euros for tons of carbon, we probably would not have invested together. So trust, human presence is very important. So overall, we tend to forget that, but very often, even mergers and acquisitions start in human relations. The other word is pertinence. Because when you're trying to reduce carbon emissions and so on, and you're called Schneider, you're well recognized for it and you're good at it, which tends to be enough. But that's not all there is to life. So, in the relevance of livelihoods, there's this social dimension, which is at the core of the project. We can make carbon credits to make sure that a plant in China pollutes a little less. And we're far from this, and I'm glad we are. But behind this relevance, and it's very important for us, our credits cannot be contested. When we talk sustainable development in 2025, everybody's talking about carbon. You talk to anyone about sustainability, they're going to reduce their carbon emissions. It's very important, but there's also the way to do it. And when the word was created, there was this notion that it was a link between social, environmental, societal, and so on. Within this livelihood project, you have all of this. So 15 years ago, there was this cup of coffee, and 2 weeks ago, we were together on a coffee plantation. Several of us sitting here were there. Even Sébastien Labrioude said that that coffee was at least as good as the other one I talked about. But that's where we realize that our carbon credits are worth something for the people we're talking to. And it's there in their life, not for the carbon credits, but for their future. And this notion is mandatory. And that's why we're embarking on this next project. And the last word is lucidity. We're creating this fund, and therefore we're talking about 2050. Not many of us will be there at the time. We know that the ones buying a Schneider switch or a Hermes tie or whatever, we're not sure that they'll still be around. But one thing is certain is that whoever commits to becoming a partner today has to still be within that partnership in 2050. If we're trying to reduce vulnerability throughout the world, that's good. The story is just as important. we're embarking our staff in the adventures we commit to. And we need to SBTI, which is one of these structures, which is very important for businesses, and somebody's inventing a carbon logic for 2035 in Porte de Versailles, where there's tech. We won't save carbon without tech, but we won't save the planet without nature and people without biodiversity. So, in what we're doing here, we can say, we can tell to those who invented SBTI and others that this dimension of development and so on is mandatory. Otherwise, it won't work. So it's very important to focus on the human being. And I think that the companies who are joining livelihoods have that in their DNA. Thank you.
Alors, comme vous pouvez voir, dans Livelihood,
As you can see, at Livelihoods, we have incredible partners, people who are passionate. So you talked about the commitment of employees. And Lionel, I was interested for you to tell us how you are sharing this commitment with employees. And I'm asking this question because I see many companies supporting different initiatives. There are press releases, but in the end, employees are not aware and not necessarily interested. Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Hello, everyone. Gilles talked a lot, so I'm not going to repeat what he said. He said the essential part, as usual, but I'm going to tell you what we do with our teams and why we are here alongside Livelihood very quickly. So our reflection started, for those who know, from the Kyoto Protocol, when aircraft companies had committed morally and envisaged to absorb 10% of their carbon footprint. After that, you may have heard that the EU had envisaged after that to implement a carbon tax on aircrafts landing in Europe, and nothing was done. So 15 years ago, as founding associates, we created this company with 3 members. We saw that nothing was happening. We said we would do it ourselves. So 15 years ago, we made a strong decision, which was to try to reduce, but we, in our work line, we reduced that very little. For those taking the plane, we decided to absorb 100% of their carbon footprint. On our scale, that represents a lot. I will talk about that later, but it's quite high. So before discussing with Bernard, we thought we were very strong, as many. We made quite a few mistakes, and we tried to set up a project on our own in Brazil, but we quickly realized that we were not competent enough, and I was lucky to meet Bernard very quickly, and we started working on a common project. At the time, Livelihoods didn't exist. Bernard and Jean-Pierre, Guillaume was at Danone, and we shared a common project in the Sinesano to plant mangrove. So we co-invested at that time, and I am pretentious enough to think that after this project, Bernard had the idea to bring in new investors and to create livelihood, and then everything that followed. So we committed very strongly from this point of view. As you said, we have no legal or financial obligation, but one of consciousness, and that we've had for a very long time. Having it is a good thing, but the luck we have is that we are our own shareholders in our own company. We can make decisions quickly, but this needs to be shared with our employees and clients. So the first aim is to for it to touch our employees. We are in a world in which our teams share our philosophy, but concretely in forestry projects, we had them get involved quickly. We sent 150 people in Senegal for projects in Indonesia or for a whole week. So they went to plant mangroves. Well, and with 40 degrees, it's very hard. So it's a good way to raise awareness, I think, to these projects. And obviously, when these teams come back home, they talk about it to all of the teams. And on the side, for those who don't have the opportunity to go plant on site, we created a training program so that our advisors can travel, those advising traveling to clients, they are able to talk about it in a natural way. It's not a marketing tool we use, but we give the possibility to our customers for our traveling books or carnet de voyage, they have a possibility to see what we do. Once again, we made the decision to absorb our carbon footprint for them. We're not asking anything from them. They are our clients travel. It's for pleasure. We don't want to make it complicated. But then if they want to go one step further, they can look at all the information that is at their disposal. So on our level, I often say this to Bernard, that we're not the biggest investors in terms of investment or money, but we're not a part of the CAC 40, but it's a lot for us. It's meaningful on our level.
Et peut-être juste un point très
And maybe one quick thing that Lionel didn't mention, and it's not on the website, but I discovered it by chance and it really touched me. I'd like to share it with you. During COVID, so we had to decrease costs in many ways, and I discovered that Voyageurs du Monde had continued to support carbon credit despite of this drastic decrease in business. But the business that remained, what they did is they continued to do it anyhow, and it really touched me because sustainable development is development. If I do business, I don't want it to be dubious or dirty. So, but many people, when they want to save money, go astray sometimes. So I think there's a way to do it, and you did it. So I wanted to mention it because it's not written anywhere. Yes, we're fully committed. Now I will invite Antoine to come and join us. Welcome. It's a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you. Maybe before deep diving into our topic, I have a question that is a more personal one, if I may. I was wondering, what is the trait of character or quality that helps you most in your everyday life as a compass to manage complexity, and what is the compass you use? Well, the beginning of any compass is a value. It's integrity. And the second thing is energy, the ability to be optimistic when things are not very good, and the opposite is true as well. I think this compass, as you indicated, we can see is clearly existing at Livelihood. Danone is one of the companies that was one of the founding members of Livelihood. But I would be interested in taking a different perspective and try to understand. Nowadays, we talk about going beyond the supply chain. Currently, in your value chain, what does Livelihoods provide? What does it mean in terms of your daily operations? Well, many things. And we are well beyond the idea of carbon credit, well beyond the idea of compensation. When you have a company which life depends on nature, when you have a company that is part of people's daily life with an extremely strong mission, health through food, through nutrition for the greatest number. You cannot limit your thought at just looking at society. That's what Antoine Riboud said at the time where he was selling ice cream, B2B, and yogurt pots and ice cream before shifting to retail, but for mass distribution. But at Danone, we understand that the responsibility of the company does not stop at the door of the company, and we can at the same time have a good performance and be responsible. And the most important, that's the most important word. And we have this acute conscience of the fact that we depend on nature, we depend on biodiversity, we depend on communities. We also depend on our legitimacy as a society for people buying our products. So we must think about the ecosystem. If in 5 years' time or 10 years, there's no more rainfall, or in 5 or 10 years, there's no more farmers because there's no more soil, it died out, or because none of the farmers' children want to take over the farm because it's very difficult. If we are irresponsible and pollute everything, we won't exist. So everything we do through livelihoods or with livelihoods and beyond livelihoods as well is deeply rooted in this conviction. In the same way as an individual has values, whether at work or outside of work, it's not sustainability on one side and performance on the other. Sustainability is absolutely strategic. Without sustainability, no future for a company. And livelihoods is a way for us to translate it by going broadly beyond carbon credit. It's about biodiversity, it's an impact on communities, it's building for the long term things that represent a real shift, a genuine shift. And it's really sitting around to speak about it together. So Danone is a great company. How, when you manage such a company the size of an elephant, you still keep the agility of a butterfly? How can you convey this? We don't have the size of an elephant when we compare ourselves to other companies, and some elephants know how to dance anyway, and some fly, at least in children's tales. But the idea is, well, the size helps us do things, absorb shocks, it helps us think about the long term. But we are big and very small at the same time compared to competitors, and we earn our life by selling a butter of Evian after another and yogurt pots after another, and we are really present in people's life. So this means that we must be close to the ground and modest. So we talked about ecosystems, and when the climate will no longer help raise and able to raise cattle. For example, a farm in Morocco, it means 3 or 4 cows. For a small farmer, cattle breeder, in France there are 100, when you suffer from climate change, it's you have to do it very close to the ground. The way in which you described it, I understand that it's part of the culture. It's not necessarily something that you need to repeat all the time because it circulates It's visible in the things people do, but I have a burning question because I was wondering, I'm coming back a little. This fund, Livelihoods, was created. So you need to find funds for risky projects under control, but it still remains risky. How do you unleash those funds? How do you open? And it's different when you invest in a project that is yours or opening it up to other partners. So I wonder what there is in Danone's culture that enabled this openness to other partners. I think that the first thing at Danone, there is an entrepreneurial spirit. We like doing things. And Bernard, with his incredible strength of conviction, found Frank, and Frank said, "That's really clever." So that's how it started. And it's, oh, wow, it's meaningful. We should try. A second thing that is deeply rooted in the culture at Danone is curiosity. We don't do things alone. We learn by working with others. You test. And this is connected to the fact that we are Indonesian in Indonesia, we're Chinese in China, and we're Mexican in Mexico. So we're rooted in realities that are extremely local. You couldn't survive on these markets or ecosystems. It's only possible if you listen to your consumers, you listen to your ecosystem, and if you learn from the people who depend on you or you depend on. So yes, it's deeply rooted in our culture. Danone also has always had an extraordinary reinvention or culture of reinvention. Antoine Riboud, who is one of the two founding members, the iconic CEO of BSN, and Daniel Carasso, who was the son of Danone's founder for yogurt. Antoine Riboud was managing a company that sold glass. The day he noticed that his company became non-relevant for technological reasons, he shifted to move from content to containers. Franck Riboud, at the end of the 90s, he came after his father and he managed a conglomerate of mass retail consumption products, La Piquichon, Tamora. There had been Lançon Champagne, Kronenberg beer, William Saurin, and so many others. Franck said the future of food is with health. So he completely had a second shift of his group to focus on health by selling most of his group to rebuild it in a different way. So there's a fundamental culture of questioning oneself, changing and reinventing oneself. It's not always easy. There are crises, but this is fully rooted and embedded in this culture. The inventor of Danone, the founder of the Danone brand in Barcelona in 1919, is a man who was a migrant. He came from Bulgaria, and he wondered about why children have health problems or health issues in Barcelona. He looked at what the Institut Pasteur was doing, and there was a Menchikov had a prize. He created something sold in pharmacies based on what he brought back from Bulgaria. So there's this culture that's really embedded in the company as well. That is something we see, or I have heard all evening, finding solutions to issues. And I think that's often people do the opposite. And I believe that here, it's a key element, having this idea to improve things. And a word that came back at numerous occasions, trust. It wasn't mentioned as such, but I think there's the word excellence. What I will remember, if I was to summarize, it's a boldness, a pragmatic boldness or daring boldness, because Livelihoods is a part and his partners are present. They decide to help thousands and dozens of thousands of farmers, small farmers. And if it was just to reduce the CO2, it would be easier with big companies, but choosing to do it with small farmers in very remote places where there's no road to reach them. It's not the easiest, but it's the most powerful way. And pragmatism, because it's good to be bold and daring, but you need to deliver at some point. And it's about planting, measuring, training people. And here we had the pleasure, we're celebrating the 15 years of boldness. And I'm already dreaming of the next 15 years of boldness. Thank you.
Yeah. Merci. Merci, Gilles. Bravo. All right. Very good. So we're going to be very short because we know we've heard, and it's difficult also to build on what we've just heard. But I think I'm living, with this idea that basically the livelihood story is a story that is in the making still, even after 15 years. But that has, of course, like many of the trees that you can see on our logo, very strong roots. But if you see the livelihoods tree, it's not really a tree, it's people that are carrying the tree. And that's very important. And this dual dimension is very important. And the livelihood story is, of course, about a story of men and women that decide at some point, and I think that was very much illustrated in many of the testimony today, that decide to do something together. And any type of revolution always started, with two people that decide to do something together. And we know we must engage ourselves to change things wherever we are. And I think my last thought is really for our partners, the partners that Jean-Pierre, Bernard, you've gathered at the very beginning, and that are, for many of them, still with us. We have also a new future partner in the room today that I'm sure we're going to welcome in the next days. So that's why the adventure continues. You can also see the togetherness between the people that know each other, that tease each other sometimes as well. But that's also the spirit of camaraderie that has been developed over the years. So on behalf of the livelihood team that is there, and I want to finish thanking them for their commitment, their everyday commitment to make basically the things work, to pivot, as you said, Manuela, to make the change. A big thank you to you guys and girls, because the story is of course ongoing, and it's very humbling for me to have the chance to work with you every day, and also to have the chance to have the trust, because that's the word that's finished from our co-founders and of my president. Thank you very much.